Hey, what's up guys? I'm BTC. At one of the panels for BlizzCon over the weekend, Blizzard revealed a ton of early concept art for heroes and ideas and all that kind of stuff in the very beginnings of Overwatch. And what I want to do today is I'm going to go through some of it and show you guys like some of the really cool things, the original character concepts that they had. And hopefully some of this stuff might actually end up getting into the full game at some point or another. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe because I always got tons of awesome daily Overwatch content. So subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any of it. Alright, so I'm sure a lot of people have seen this image before. And the code name for Overwatch when it was in development was Prometheus. Now, a lot of people probably know that originally the team was working on this big MMO called Titan. Well, it was codenamed Titan, but that fell apart. So what Blizzard did was they took a lot of the ideas that they had from that MMO and they kind of transitioned it into the game that would become Overwatch. Now, they didn't take it kind of like one for one, like basically they used a lot of the ideas from it, but they had to create all new artwork and all new code and all that kind of stuff in order to actually make the game Overwatch. So this image right here is basically what sold the idea of the game to the higher ups at Blizzard and Activision, and they saw this and they really liked it and they said, okay, this is what we want to make. So there's a lot of recognizable characters here. You got, Mercy and Bastion and Tracer and Genji, Torbjorn, Winston, Reaper, all those. But there's a couple here that actually did make it to the game, but in a different form. So on the bottom left, that is Widowmaker. That is what the early concept of Widow was. But probably the biggest surprise is the giant red robot in the center. That is actually Reinhardt, because a lot of people thought for a while that was going to be like Doomfist or something like that, but that is actually early concept of Reinhardt. He was actually called Wildebeest at that time, and it was supposed to be this kind of older, outdated Omnic that was basically a big tank kind of thing. So of course, one of the main ideas of this game was to have all of these different character classes. So this was the original versions of those classes, and you can see a lot of this stuff is basically what it is in the game right now. So the first one, Jumper, obviously is Tracer, and then Reaper is, well, just Reaper. Although he had a Magnum as one of his original weapons, but he doesn't have that anymore. Now the Juggernaut seems to have been completely removed. I think some of the abilities, like basically just the charge, was what was rolled over into Reinhardt. Phoenix obviously became Pharah. Architect is Symmetra. A lot of the stuff there is very similar to what she has. It's actually kind of interesting because if you'll notice, one of her original abilities was that shield generator, which is what she now has for an ultimate. And then Assassin was Genji, of course, but at the time, Genji was a mix of both what we now know as Genji and Hanzo, because you can see the weapons, they originally wanted to give him both a bow and a katana. And then, of course, Guardian is going to be Mercy. She has, the healing and the resurrect, which, everybody loves the res now. The weapons is the Stinger. I think that's basically just a name for her little pistol. Longshot is what would become Widowmaker. So you have the grappling hook and the sniper rifle and that sort of stuff. Now the next character is Spec Ops, and I thought this one was kind of funny because the ability is stealth, but there's no character art. So I don't know if that was because they legitimately didn't have character art or because someone was being funny and they just literally didn't include anything because it's stealth and it's invisible so you can't see it. I don't know. I'm guessing that they probably didn't have character art at the time. I just thought that was funny. But if you look at the abilities, you have stealth, you have EMP, and then you have like these kind of silence pistol kind of thing. That you can see that was the early idea of what would become Sombra. And the last character was the Mechanic, which is obviously Torbjorn. And Torbjorn is very much based off of the Engineer from TF2. And in that game, the Engineer has the Sentry and the Teleporter as his abilities. Now, there was also some other ideas that they had as well. They kind of wanted to see how much they could push the envelope because the idea was, well, they had a genius talking gorilla from the moon So how much further can they actually push the envelope with all their characters? So like this was early concept idea. You had basically what was an alien, and I don't think aliens actually exist in the Overwatch universe just yet. But the first idea was, yeah, they were going to have aliens, and then they have a guy in this gigantic kind of robo suit thing. And then the next one was just like a hockey player. And of course, the hockey player guy would eventually become Lucio. Now, one of the really early ideas they had, and unfortunately they don't have any concept art for it, was this Russian lady who rode on the back of a giant grizzly bear. And the Russian had 2 guns, one in each hand. And the ultimate would be the bear stands up and pulls out 2 additional guns. So the bear would actually be holding 2 guns and the lady on the back as well. So that was basically the ult. The bear would pull out the extra guns, which is kind of hilarious. It's unfortunate they don't have any concept art for it. So then they came up with all of these other ideas where you have like monkey with a jetpack, and then you had a robot monkey, and then an alligator with a jetpack, and there's like all this different crazy stuff, and it didn't come out to be. But of course, the one thing that they did come up with, which I'm still kind of hoping that they actually put in the game, is the jetpack cat. So all of the jetpack characters ended up kind of coalescing into jetpack cat. And on the left side, you have like the cool jetpack cat version, and the right side is more of like the really lazy, fat cat that's just kind of like sitting there, pawing at the controls and stuff. It just looks hilarious. I really think they should add this to the game. I think that would be great. So lastly, one of the coolest things that they showed, besides Jetpack Cat, of course, was this giant character sheet, and it just has a ton of information on it. So I'm going to try to go through this real fast. So on the top row, you can see in the far left there, it's Watcher, has a staff gun, transfusion, and teleport. This is an Omnic. It looks very similar to the robots from the Mass Effect series. And then you have Yetzi, Claws, Ice Storm, and Freeze Snap. Helio, which is electro maces, healing light, and protection. Looks like he also has wings, so it might have been kind of a similar character to what we have for Mercy right now. And then you have Troy, who has a visor that's very similar to Soldier 76. He has Flail, Charge, and Shield, so it sounds like that was going to be a tank character, but they probably end up rolling some of those abilities into what would become Reinhardt. And then for the second row on the far left, you have Mastermind, which is just this giant Omnic thing, and it says, what is that? It says something matter gun, a sphere, and an orb of some kind. I can't tell, unfortunately, because it's cut off. And then you have Rashi, I believe, who has a damage beam, a strike, I think it says, and then a mass heal. Moving over, you have Rumble, who has siege mode, a stationary shield, and an energy bolt. It sounds like they rolled over a bunch of that stuff into what would become Bastion. And next up is Hanzo, who very much looks like Genji, and that's because in the very early stages of development, Hanzo and Genji were the same character, and later on they decided to split it into 2 different ones. Next up on the right, you see Winston, and Winston is interesting because he is completely original to Overwatch. So all of these other characters had their start in some of those earlier versions of the game, like the Titan and the Crossworlds and stuff, the MMOs that failed. Well, a lot of this character art came from that sort of stuff. So Winston, however, is completely original to the Overwatch universe. So on the next line, we have Freak, which is this punk kind of cybernetic person with a cannon, a stomp, and an attract. So it looks like some of those abilities were rolled into Orisa. Reaper is just Reaper. He's got the shotguns, the Shadow Walk, and the Death Blossom. Iris has a particle beam, a speed boost, and a shield, so it sounds like some of that stuff was rolled into Lucio, although I think we really do need another character that can provide a speed boost, because with only Lucio having it, it makes him probably a little too unique. I think that ability should be spread out to other characters a little bit more. And then we have Hive Mind, who has a lightning gun, a disable, and an EMP pulse. Now the EMP obviously went to Sombra. And on the next line, we have Phoenix, who has a flamethrower, but that character was never added to the game. Next up is Frost, who has an ice axe, an ice patch, and an ice wall. Now, obviously, we don't have Frost, but we have Mei, so it looks like they took some of those ideas and then just put it into the Mei character. Ironclad obviously became Torbjorn. That's pretty clear. Although, if you look, he says he has a grab hammer, a slam, and a bowling ball. Like, one of his early abilities for Torbjorn was a bowling ball. I don't even know where that possibly could have come from. What could they possibly have done with that? A bowling ball? Why would they have that there? Next up is Symmetra, who has an arc welder, deploy 3 sentry, and orb buffs. So obviously Symmetra is Symmetra. Next one is Luke, who has a chain sword, which sounds really awesome, spawns minions, and flame strike. I don't know how the whole minion thing would work in this game. If you've ever played against the computer, like the AI in this game, it's really bad. Obviously, Overwatch was not meant to have, like, computer-controlled enemies, so if you had minions, I don't really know how good they would be, because the AI in Overwatch right now is really, really terrible. So the next line, we have the Huntress, who has a crossbow, multi-shot, and imbue shot. So it looks like some of that stuff was put into basically what would be the Hanzo character. So they took some of those ideas and they split up the Hanzo into the Genji and the Hanzo, and that's what we got. Next up is Longshot, who has a sniper rifle, a grappling hook, and visor. This would become Widowmaker, so this is early concept for Widow. Next is Brit, who has a pistol, a support mech, and an attack mech. So obviously, we don't have that character in the game, but we do have D.Va. So rather than having different mechs, it's all in one. So that's what they did. They kind of like changed it a little bit. They made it into D.Va, and they condensed it down into just the one mech. Next is Firestarter, who has a slag gun. It looks like Molotovs and Eruption. So obviously we don't have a fire-based character in the game. The closest thing we have is what? Fire Strike from Reinhardt and Molten Core from Torbjorn. We do have an ice-based character with Mei, so it's possible they still might add a fire-based character as well. Next up, I can't quite read the name of that, but it looks like some sort of electric-based kind of cybernetic person. I think the last one says Electrocute. I think that's what that is. Next character is Angelica. Obviously, this is Mercy. This was her first name. She has a heal beam. She had a teleport originally, and then resurrect. Can you imagine Mercy with a teleport? Man, that would be bad times. Next character is Psyblade, who has a super punch, a shockwave, and a backbreaker. So this is just some sort of very cybernetically enhanced kind of woman. Basically, I think this is like the female version of Doomfist is originally what it would basically be. So the next character is McLeod, who is very much ripped straight out of Highlander. He's got a claymore, he has the only one ability, and then it's Stampede. So he's got a little bit of Braveheart going on there, but they very clearly were going with a Highlander-type motif there. Next up is the Praetor, who has twin cannons, tri-grenade, and a hunter visor. So this is some sort of like really strong kind of Omnic. On the next row, we have Mama Hong, and the only ability we have for that is Manslaughter. I don't know what that is, but that looks like something straight out of one of those Kung Fu movies. Next up is Bruiser, who has a wrist chain gun. I don't know what that is. Maybe that basically would become like what Orisa has. And moving over, we have Mercy, but this was actually one of the original names for Pharah before they switched up the names a little bit there. So Mercy with the rocket barrage. So again, obviously they changed the name. Next up is Recluse, who has a mouth beam. This is that really weird looking kind of arachnid type character that you have on that big image that I showed at the beginning of the video, where she has like these gigantic kind of robot things coming out of her back or out of her arms, and they look kind of like alien almost. That is what that character is. So on the very, very bottom row, it's kind of cut off, but you can very clearly see on the bottom left is Roadhog. Then we have some sort of Omnic, no idea what that is. The next one in the middle looks like it might be almost like an alien or a beast or something, or maybe just some sort of weird Omnic thing. I don't know. And then next to that, we have the red robot, which was originally Wildebeest, and then it became Reinhardt. And then, of course, on the very, very, very bottom right is Tracer. So just a ton of characters. Obviously, some of these are in the game right now. Some of them have been changed, but they also said that some of the characters that are on this list might actually end up joining the game at some point in time. And I think some of these ideas would be pretty cool. I think having a fire-based character would be interesting. Luke with the chainsword looks pretty awesome. The Praetor also looks pretty awesome. It'd be, you know, nothing beats Jetpack Cat. I mean, the #1 priority should be Jetpack Cat. So there you have it, guys, a ton of the original character concept art. Now, obviously, Jetpack Cat is by far the best character that they showed, but what is your second favorite character besides Jetpack Cat? Let me know in the comments section. Also, don't forget to check out my Discord. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The links for that stuff is down below. Thanks for watching. Remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault. Also, special thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping to make this all possible. If you'd like to see what kind of cool rewards you can get for supporting the channel, check the links on screen and down below.